Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and salam satu Malaysia. I am Zaibedah binti Zaharum from UiTM Cawangan Johor, and for today I would like to present my research paper entitled The Influence of Liquidity Management on Banks' Profitability. Before we go into detail, I would like to discuss 5 main aspects regarding this research. First, the introduction. Second, the literature review. Third, the research method. Fourth, I will go through the result and discussion. And last but not least, the conclusion. First of all, allow me to give a brief introduction regarding this topic. As we all know, liquidity is defined as the ability to convert assets or securities into cash without difficulty. Liquidity management is a critical requirement that any business must adhere to satisfy its obligations, which include short-term financial and organizational expenses. Profitability is sometimes described as the difference between spending and revenue during a specific time period, generally a financial year. Profitability of the banking industry determines the financial and banking sector's consistency and reliability. Henceforth, we have identified several issues related to this topic. First, every stakeholder is concerned about a corporation's liquidity because of their huge influence on the company's profitability. Next, liquidity risk management is one of the most onerous obligations for financial intermediaries such as banks, because banks are the primary providers of liquidity in the financial system. The analysts are concerned that the company will not be able to extract concessions from vendors, borrowers, or banks without liquidation. Next, banks must carefully plan their net liquidity position since they cannot afford to have liquidity issues, which will threaten their image and credibility. Apart from that, keeping too much cash on hand might limit business investing options and hurt the company bottom line. On the other hand, having less liquidity holdings might lead to liquidity risk and in the long term hinder the bank's growth. The goal of this research is to examine if Malaysian commercial banks are good at managing their liquidity, which may be classed as internal factors that affect commercial bank profitability, especially after the banking sector's financial crisis in 2007. Therefore, the purpose of the study is to investigate the relationship between the liquidity ratios and the profitability of selected commercial banks in Malaysia. The question is, what is the relationship between the liquidity ratios and profitability of commercial banks in Malaysia? So we came up with a few hypotheses. First, there is a significant relationship between current ratio, CR, and return on asset, ROA. Second, there is a significant relationship between cash deposit ratio, CDR, and return on asset, ROA. Third, there is a significant relationship between loan to total deposit ratio, LTDR, and return on asset, ROA. Fourth, there is a significant relationship between capital to asset ratio, CAR, and return on asset, ROA. And the fifth one will be, there is a significant relationship between non-performing loan, NPL, and return on asset, ROA. Now let's look at the literature review. First, we have return on asset, ROA, which refers to a financial ratio that indicates how profitable a company is in relation to its total assets. In a study by Mariti and Purnawati in 2021, ROA is used to analyze the profitability of banking organizations since it focuses on measuring the efficiency of a banking company and managing its assets to generate profits. Meanwhile, Malik et al. In 2016 believed that ROA reflects the potential of a bank's asset to generate profit, though this estimate might be biased due to off-balance sheet activities. Next, we have the current ratio CR, which is one of the most often utilized liquidity management metrics. The current ratio measures a company's ability to pay short-term obligations, which is due within 1 year. In a study by Japasi in 2020, he discovered a substantial positive relationship between current ratio and bank financial performance. Meanwhile, Nabil and Hussein in 2017, they revealed that the current ratio and return on asset have a significant negative relationship. Then we have the cash deposit ratio, CDR, which is equal to total cash over total deposits. The bank must maintain liquidity to operate and will hold an amount of cash to service net withdrawals from customer activities such as drawing from their deposit, which is checking and savings accounts. In a study by Kati in 2020, she found that the cash deposit ratio has a positive but insignificant relationship with bank profitability. Meanwhile, Chowdhury in 2021 found that there is no significant relationship with the bank's profitability. Loan to total deposit ratio LTDR helps to show how well a bank is attracting and retaining customers. If a bank's deposits are increasing, new money and new clients are being onboarded. As a result, the bank will likely have more money to lend, which should increase earnings. In a study by Septiani and Lasari in 2016, they found out that the LTD has an impact on the company's profitability, whereas Hassini et al. In 2021 discovered that LTD has a negative impact on financial performance. There is also the capital to asset ratio, CAR, that shows how much the total assets of a bank contain elements of risk which are also funded from the bank's own capital in addition to obtaining funds from other sources. Henceforth, in the study by Ebenezer et al. In 2017, they found out that CAR has a positive and significant effect on the bank profitability. Next, Jati 2021 found that there is a negative impact and insignificant relationship with return on assets. Lastly, Prastama and Yatnya in 2020 discovered that CAR has a positive and significant effect on bank profitability. Then we have non-performing loan NPL, which is a loan that borrower is in default due to the fact that they have not made any schedules payments for a specified period. Koju and Wang in 2018 discovered that bank profitability and NPLs have a negative relationship. Meanwhile, Silaban in 2017 found that non-performing loan NPLs have a significant positive effect on the profitability ROA. Whereas Saleh and Winarso in 2021 showed result of significant negative impact on the bank's performance. Last but not least, Prastama and Yatnya in 2020 found that NPLs has a negative and significant effect on banking profitability. Based on the literature reviews, we came up with this research framework. We have return on assets, which fall under the dependent variables, and under the independent variables, we have the current ratio, cash deposit ratio, loan to total deposit ratio, capital to asset ratio, and lastly, non-performing loan. Now let's look at our findings. First, we have the descriptive analysis, which were made of a collection of fundamental summary coefficients that were used to describe a data set, which might be a representation of the full population or a portion of it. Table 1 shows the mean, median, maximum, minimum standard deviation, skewness, and kurtosis of the return on asset ROA, current ratio CR, cash deposit ratio CDR, loan to deposit ratio LTD, capital to asset ratio CAR, and non-performing loans NPLs. Next, the correlation analysis, which may be defined as the linear relationship between two variables and the evaluation of the strength of the linear relationship using available statistical data. The probability value between capital to asset ratio CAR and return on asset ROA was 0.0292, means that there is a significance as the value was below 0.05. The probability value of 0.0019 indicates that there is a relationship between non-performing loans (NPLs) and return on assets (ROAs) because the value is less than 0.05. The multicollinearity test is used to determine if two independent variables have intercorrelations or multicollinearity. Table 3 showed that all of the values are less than 10, indicating that there is no weak correlation between the variables, and the null hypothesis is not rejected, indicating that there is no major multicollinearity problem. Lastly, regression analysis was used to examine the relationship between over two variables and to determine whether the dependent variable effect was explained by the independent variables. According to Table 4, the F-static value is 4.410185 and the F-static p-value is 0.002427. As the value significance level is less than 5%, the null hypothesis must be rejected. This suggests that at least one of the factors was relevant in determining the financial firm's efficiency. Table 4 showed that p-value for current ratio and non-performing loan is 0.0234 and 0.0203, which is less than 5% level of significance. As a result, the null hypothesis must be rejected, and changes in the current ratio will affect asset return significantly. However, p-value for cash deposit ratio, loan to total deposit ratio, and capital to asset ratio is 0.3610, 0.0939, and 0.1184, which are more than 5% level of significance. As a result, the null will not be rejected, and changes in those variables are not influencing the return on asset. In conclusion, the primary purpose is to assess the influence of liquidity on commercial bank profitability in Malaysia. First and foremost, current ratio showed that it has a positive relationship with return on asset. Based on the previous study from Jafasi in 2020, he found out that the current ratio also has a positive relationship with return on asset. Next, for cash deposit ratio, it has a negative relationship with return on asset. This result is similar with the previous study from Chaudhary in 2021, where he found that there is no significant relationship with the bank profitability. Moreover, for loan to deposit ratio, the relation was negative between loan to deposit ratio and return on asset. This result is in line with the previous study from Hassini et al. In 2021, which showed a negative relationship between loan to total deposit ratio and return on asset. Apart from that, capital to asset ratio showed a negative relationship with return on asset. This result is supported with a recent study by Jati in 2021. Last but not least, this study discovered that a non-performing loan NPL and ROA had approximately positive relationship contradictory with previous researchers Saleh and Winarso in 2021, where the results showed significant negative impact on the bank's performance. It seems like we have come to the end of the presentation, but before that, let me highlight that the goal of this research consequences was to help other parties or researchers to better understand how the variables affect banks' liquidity performance. As a result, the research findings and suggestions give prospective researchers a greater grasp of the issue, and they may be able to improve based on the offered recommendations. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you.